All right, let's go ahead and get back into this. Right now we're looking at the smoothed version of the airplane. Let's go back to the base mesh. As far as getting actual geometry, there's only a couple more things to do. The landing pod under the wings and the tail rudder. So why don't we go ahead and mess around a little bit with tail rudder. Let's turn on our orthographic views and let's see how we're doing here as far as the size of everything. It looks like we're pretty close. There's the fillet that connects the airplane to the wing. So that's going to look a little bit different in top view, but this shape here is a shape that I would maybe like to dial in before we go too much further. So we will go into edit mode. I will press 1 so we're in vertex select. I will select these two vertices and I will say scale by hitting S and then Y for the direction. We have to change the pivot point for the scale up here to bounding box center, so that way the scale is centered around the world and not at that point that you saw originally. So scale S in the Y direction, hit Y on the keyboard. So we can sculpt that out a little better. I'm thinking we're going to chase that up. So let's go ahead and get those. Scale Y. Once again, we'll select those. Scale Y. And as I'm looking at that, that's looking way more controlled. I would like to slide these vertices here down a little bit, but I mentioned this in class to somebody, but let's also talk about this on the video, is sometimes I want to use the edge here as a move tool. And I can actually do that. I can right click here and I can say slide vertices. And the hotkey for that is Shift V. So if I do that, I can slide the vertices along those edges. If I go past this point, it'll slide along that one. If I go down this way, it'll slide along that one. So right now, the way that I want to go with this is I wanted to bring it down a little bit to sort of center that better. And that's working out very well. Okay. So now that this shape is looking pretty good relative to what we saw in those reference photos, what we can do is we can start extruding back the final area on that. I'm going to turn the visibility back on in this so we can look at this inside view. Let's try that again, or the other side view. All right. So we're coming back here and you can see what's happening. We have to create this shape. It's a little more complex than the ones we've done in the past, and that it's crawling onto this polygon a little bit here, although it does move, so we will probably let this be free floating down here, because technically the rudder would turn, which would mean this could not be connected to the body. So let's consider it like that. So there's the shape. I'm going to hit 2 on the keyboard, so I'm edge selecting, and then Alt click that. And you can see that the selection stopped at that point. What's happening is we have a kite polygon here. You can see that that is technically four-sided, but it's sort of cheating relative to some of the other stuff that we've been doing. So it gets a little confused, and we'll have to Alt-Shift-click the next edge so that we get both of the loops there. Eventually, we will work that out to where that won't be an issue anymore. But for right now, to keep moving forward, we'll work that for the jigsaw puzzle. And then, as usual, we're going to click E on the keyboard. Then we're going to click without moving the mouse, and then move this backward. So E, click, and then we're going to drag this out to a legitimate size polygon. And once again, E, click. We're going to drag this back again, and then E, click. Oops, no, I don't want to do that. E, click. It started moving before I clicked. We'll get one more poly in here yet, so E, click, and we'll bring this out to the very end. We're going to have to eliminate a few polygons here, but at least we're in a spot now where we can really start to consider some of this. All right, so right now, in the viewport, we're not able to see through the airplane. And what's happening is we're merging and unmerging stuff here. You'll notice that it keeps messing up which shader is the one that's being used. So as we merged this, or did a join, it inherited the attributes of the other shader, the other material. So with that in mind, we have to go back every once in a while, and we have to set this back to what it used to be. So alpha blend. So there we go, we're back again. We can try to decide what polygons here we're going to cull and which ones we're going to keep. So I can tell you right now that I can already see a few that we're going to cull out of here. What you can see right here, there's this polygon that's right here. There's a little chunk of this that exists still on the tail rudder. I'll probably keep this polygon because ones that are exclusive where they don't touch anything on this feature in the back, those are the ones that we'll get rid of. So I'm going to hit 3 on the keyboard, and all of these ones here, if you notice, they are not at all connecting to the airplane. This one crosses over a little bit, but honestly I think we can redistribute that one and maybe even kill that one. That one for sure is going to get used. This one we don't need, that one we don't need. This one crosses over, crosses over, crosses over, crosses over, crosses over. So the rest of these, for the most part, I think we will keep. I'm going to hit delete on the keyboard and then say delete faces. All right, and we've got that little spot here where it's kind of iffy which way we could go with that, but I'm good with where it's at for right now. Now let's start to distribute this out. I'm going to go back into 1 on the keyboard, and I will move these forward a little bit to start to bring them in line. And what I can also start doing is sculpting them a little bit. And you can see here, we probably need to move these forward. Even though it's not going to be the best distribution, we're going to make it decent for what we're doing. I'm going to show you another trick here. I'm going to go to rotate, all right, and then I'm going to rotate. If you think about what axis I'm rotating in at this moment, it would be Y. So I'm going to hit Y on the keyboard, and then I'm going to sort of rotate this. The problem is if I rotate it too much, you see it starts drawing it in vertically. I don't want to rotate much, just a little bit to get it off of the plane, meaning the plane of the axis, not the airplane. I'm going to click, and then now when I scale this selection, and I'm going to scale an X in this example, stop that, undo, I'll just go to the scale tool. So I'm going to scale here, and you can see now I can adjust the angle of this without it going up or down at all, because now I'm scaling. I'm not rotating. So I break the plane. If the plane is perfectly vertical, it's not sure what to do as far as the direction to scale because it's perfectly vertical. There's no angle to change. So I just make a tiny little adjustment, and then the scale tool works for this trick. And it's nice because you can see how I can get pretty good distribution. Like, look how nice that's lining up with that right now just by using that trick. So I'm going to come in here, and I'm going to go back to the move tool, and we will start to bring these in, and we'll keep adjusting them, sculpting them out. And again, maybe we'll relieve this one a smidge, and we'll bring this in. And remember, at the end, we will have to do some amount of actual sculpting, and we just have to get to a point where we're ready for that. So I'm going to select all these verts, and again, I'm going to scale, because now that we did that move, it's a little bit off. And then I'm going to go back to the move tool. All right. And we'll keep going here, working on this geometry. Hopefully you can already see where we're going with this. So I'll let this start to open up to get a little bit better distribution back here. And we will take these, and I will say scale in Z, so that we can start to distribute those out a little better as they move back. You can see as they open up here. And this set here, I could probably tweak a little bit. All right. So let's come in here. I will move this vert just the tiniest amount, just to get that in a good spot. we will take this vertice and we'll bring it and we'll sort of center it back here for right now. Let's go ahead and distribute these few polys out a little bit because they're going to get crowded in there. So I'll bring them a little bit back. And again, we'll adjust this at the end in the sculpt. I'm just making sure we got the geo. Alright, so once the geometry is good, everything else kind of falls into place. Now this here, I'm going to bring onto that. And I'm probably going to chase these vertices back a little bit as well. And then this one, again, I'm going to use that as a sculpting vertice. And I'll use this one as a sculpting vertice. I might redistribute these a little bit because I need a little more geo back here to describe that shape. I'll maybe let these crawl up so I can get the crown of that a little bit. And then we'll bring this up and in. Bring this. You know what? I'm going to do that same trick here. I'm going to say rotate. So I'm going to rotate in Y. All right, and then I'm going to break the plane just a little bit again. So remember, a plane meaning the plane of the axis, not the airplane. And then we're going to go back to scale, and we're going to scale in Z. So hit S and then Z. And now we can sort of arrange these so that when we move them up, they're better distributed relative to the airplane. This one, ultimately, I think we'll add a set of polys down here. So we'll bring these up for now. So we'll get one more, which is good because we need a little bit more sculpting geometry at the back there. So that'll give us just a little bit more of that. So let's go ahead. We'll bring this more in line here. Okay. So now we're just going to extrude this down. You can see we've got a pretty consistent shape down here. I'm going to go into select face, which is 3 on the keyboard. Hopefully you're starting to get used to using the hotkeys. So we're going to grab these polys. All right. I'm not going to grab this one for right now because we want to leave that little cut between the body and the airplane here. So I'm going to say extrude, click, and then we're going to bring this down in Z. All right. And so now we've got a little bit of extra geometry here. I'm going to go back into selecting vertices. And we'll bring this back here, kind of try to distribute this as best we can so that we get the nice shape at the back here. This one actually is in a pretty good spot. Maybe I'll raise it a little bit. And then conversely, we'll go maybe the other way with this a little bit. This one will come up a smidge. Okay, now let's look. We don't have a polygon here right now, so we'll hit 2 on the keyboard. We'll grab those and we will right click and say bridge. We've done that several times. Now we'll go back into the side view and we'll hit E and then we'll click and move this. Okay, I would like a little bit of extra geometry here, so I'm going to do 2 extrudes even though that adds a little extra geo. So extrude, click, and let's bring this out. Bring it that area right there. Then I'm going to go to 1 on the keyboard for selecting vertices. I'm going to bring this back over here. And we'll start to sculpt that out a little bit. And this one, I think, again, I'm going to use this and let that breathe a little. Actually, I don't know if I can do that because that's the plane that the rudder rotates through. So I don't think I can actually mess with that. All right, so that's okay. We'll work around it. If I need more geometry, we'll just add it later. And so now we're doing a pretty good job. The rudder in the rear is tremendously thick. By the time we get to the very back, we're going to want this shape to be more trimmed out into an actual blade. So now is when we can start to create that. Let's go ahead and grab these and we will go to scale and then Y. All right, and let's start to bring those in. All right, and we'll go progressively through this. Hold down shift so you can select multiple. Hit S for scale, hit Y on the keyboard, and we'll bring these in. Same thing again here. So scale Y. we'll keep going down the line. We will grab these two. We will say scale Y. We'll bring those in. The way the mouse moves when I'm dragging those is a little bit suspect, and I have to get used to it. It feels as though I want to drag it up and down and not left and right for that scaling. So scale Y. Now if I drag it left and right, it behaves pretty well, but I don't know. I get into the spot where it does that flipping in the center, and I feel like I want to treat that a little differently, but I'm not sure why. Sometimes it's hypersensitive and other times it isn't. And we will go scale Y, and we'll bring that in. Again, we're going to have to get much more blade-like as I look at where we're heading at the top. If I look at the thickness at the top over here, let me scroll over a little bit, you can see that's ultimately where we're heading. So I'm probably going to scale a little more aggressively, so we'll come in. See, that's that popping I'm talking about. All right, so it wants to go left and right for sure. We'll grab that one, scale Y. That one. Scale Y. That one. Scale Y. That one. Scale Y. I might wait on these ones for a minute here. Let's go, yeah, actually I'm okay with it being these two. Let me pick through, I'm getting a funny selection there. Okay, so scale Y, and we'll actually start to sculpt this now from that point rearward. Let's go ahead, we'll grab all four of these at once here. So I'm going to grab all four of those verts. We're going to say scale Y. We're going to bring those in a bit. I know that gets a little difficult to see with all of that going on. I don't think right now we need those in our way. And you can see here that we still have a little bit of sculpting. These are still a little bit far apart, so scale Y. And now we can really start to sculpt these out. Scale Y. And I'm just looking at how they flow their way down. I probably could relieve these ones a little bit. Scale Y. Because ultimately, this is gently tapering as it goes. So scale Y. And get the taper going there. And I'll use the photo reference at the very end to get the final sculpt, because I don't have all of this quite memorized. So I'll grab these two. Scale Y. Okay, and you can see how I'm going to chase that down the length past the airplane here to adjust these. So scale Y. Alright. These are a little far apart. Scale Y. And this is going to get boring to watch because I think now you can see where I'm going with this. I'll select this and this. And how about we do those all four at once? And then we'll deselect the ones in the front when we're happy. So scale Y, we'll bring those in, and then I will deselect the front two with holding Control on the keyboard. That deselects, and then scale Y, and I'll sculpt these back in there. Alright, and then we'll go to the next set. It's these two and those two. Alright, so scale Y. And we don't want to go too aggressively on the first set, so scale Y. Alright. Scale Y. Alright, and we're just continuing on and on here. We'll get these four, and we will go scale Y. And get those close to what we want to do. We're going to worry about the first set. I'm actually watching here, and then once we're happy with the first set, we'll finish off with the second set. I'll let the bottom of the rudder be a little thicker. Alright, so now let's go ahead and we'll select those, and we will do scale Y, and we'll sculpt these out. All right. Okay, so now these ones here, those 4, and we will do scale Y. And again, I'm looking at the angle of the first set and deselecting, then we will adjust the second set. And I can see that it still needs a little more adjustment. These ones here, I went a little too crazy. Scale Y. But that's what's nice. We'll finish all of that sculpt at the very end. And maybe I'll let that gently taper as we go back. I still have to look at the photo reference a little more on that. Maybe about there, so it doesn't pinch. And then these verts down here, this is pretty blade-like down at the bottom. So we're going to scale Y. We're going to start bringing that in. All right, so we have a little bit more sculpting again to do back here. We can say scale Y. All right. So as it stands right now, we have most of the geometry that we need. We can still do a little more at the very back here, so scale Y. You can see that's looking a little funky. What's nice though is we're at that point again where we're starting to sculpt. Let's go back into edge select with it, which is 2 on the keyboard. We'll alt select, and again we're getting that error because we've got another kite. We will shift alt select, shift alt select. Okay, now, and you can see we've got to do that now because we've got a few kites. So shift alt select to get the whole edge loop, and there you go. So now I'm going to deselect the edge on the very end. All right, and we'll pan over here, and we'll deselect the edge on this end. Then we should be able to come in here and say bridge. And look at that. We get all of that at the back there all at once. And we are going to have to adjust the sculpt on this at the very end, which we will discuss. But now we're really, really, really close to having all of the geo that we want here and then starting to detail. All right. Let's zoom out a little bit here. We'll shift middle mouse to pan over. And we will go back to the hardware shaded version real quick. And so let's just turn the alpha back up because I want to see this smoothed. Let's just turn it off. We'll set it to opaque. I put the alpha to 0.2, I'll put it back because the one that really changes it would be the blend mode. I'm just going to switch it there. So let's go back to the modifier tab and we will add a few divisions here. All right, I'm going to turn off as an overlay. I'm going to turn off wireframe. Okay, and then I'm going to get out of the select mode. And you can see now we've got a really aggressive edge on the tail rudder at the top. We're going to have to go in and sculpt that. It's too aggressive. But we're really close now to having all of the geometry that we need here. You can see the bulginess in here on the airplane is too aggressive. But this is the nice part, is now it's an issue of sculpting. It's not an issue of do we have the geometry that we need. And I want you to see that once we smooth this, you can see that it's doing too much at the rear. Okay, it's what we want should be more like what we're seeing down here, and we will sculpt and get that back in. And now we can start to get a little bit more pinky out, but at least we have all of the geometry that we're going to need to describe the airplane. Okay, we have stuff to finish on the cockpit as far as the sculpt, and we have to put a landing pod down at the bottom. So how about in the next video we work on the landing pod? Okay, that'll do it for this one. Thanks.